Hey everybody, Moss Jackson here, psychologist and success coach, and welcome back to Mondays with Moss. If you have already joined me, terrific. If you're a new subscriber or checking me out, pleasure to have you. Hope you enjoyed the series. So, I'm a psychologist and success coach, and I have a program called Mondays with Moss, where I really look at how to live an extraordinary life. A life of success and accomplishment and happiness. It's a weekly series, so I hope you continue to join me. So, over the last several sessions, I've been looking at this whole notion of living an extraordinary life. Asking questions like, what's really important to you? What are some of the goals you need to set? What are you passionate about? What are the high impact actions you need to take? And how to be resilient. That's the formula. Passion, goals, action, and resiliency. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about that in my toolkit. So last several weeks, I've been talking about, the first session was on what does it mean, what does it look like to live an extraordinary life, a life of being happy and successful. Then I looked at in the second session how to stay miserable, 11 ways to be miserable. Because the truth is, most people are more unhappy than happy. And how are you going through life? So last week, I started to talk about life as a victim. So people go through life, according to my model, as either as victims, survivors, or navigators. Victims are like George Costanza and Larry David, okay? So these are characters who are pretty miserable, and hopefully you can take a look at that video to get a better idea of it. Survivors, who we're going to talk about today, are guys like probably Trump and Giuliani, and maybe Robert Downey Jr., because he had to survive and fight back. And I'll talk about navigators next week. So, a survivor's mindset. One way of finding out are you a survivor, victim, or navigator is go on my website, Navigating for Success, and take my free questionnaire, Are You a Navigator? And let's see what you look like, okay? So today we're looking at this notion, actually these several sessions on victim, survivor, navigator, if not the whole series, is really the question, are you a master of the mind battle? The lifelong challenge of managing that incessant chatter or voice that lives in all of our heads. No one's immune to it. The voice that pressures you to get upset, take things personally, to make self-defeating assumptions, and to make minor upsets into major breakdowns. That's the voice in your head. It's a troublemaker. It's not very helpful. It causes you to overheat, like an overheated car that you have to pull off the road and let it calm down. And many times as survivors, you need to learn how to pull over, calm down, shut your mouth until you get your stability back. Now, the key in the mind battle is to hear the voice. Hear the chatter in your head, but don't believe it. It's just a voice. It's like someone babbling in a subway. So listen to it and ask yourself, does it have any value for me? Do I have to believe it? You really don't. So an example of a case I once worked with was, his name was Jim. He was about 42, and his goal was to make a ton of money and never report to anybody, have his own business, and be very, very independent. He had a lot of resentment and anger for his past upsets, disappointments, and feeling victimized and feeling betrayed. But instead of slipping into victim mode, he bounced back and said, I'm going to show them. No one's ever going to take advantage of me again. He was determined to be a winner, not a loser. In a way, he was fighting the battle with his dead father, who he still was carrying with him. The voice of his father kept saying, you're a loser. You're never going to be successful. And Jim was dedicated to proving his father wrong. Now, Jim had considerable wealth and business success. He had his own business. Other people saw him as very successful, yet he was angry and miserable. His wife, he judged and felt that she was just taking advantage of him, and he was a blamer of other people. He had a perfectionistic performance mindset. Performance mindset is, I gotta prove, I gotta hold to a standard. And if I slip away and don't live up to that standard, there's something wrong with me or something wrong with you. Victims often say there's something wrong with me, so they feel bad about themselves. Survivors feel there's something wrong with you, so they're angry at you. That's very different than a navigator's mindset, which is a growth mindset, which I'll talk about next week. He felt alone. His North Star was win at any cost. He was a lone wolf with very little capacity for empathy, compassion, and real connection to others. Survivors, in general, are fighters. They endure hardship. They prevail against the odds. My way or the highway. They tend to elbow their way through life. A lot of roadkill around them. They need to win to feed their ego. You want to find out what your ego's like? Listen to your voice. It will tell you. So some keys to managing your survivor mindset. First of all, we all need survivor skills. We got to know how to stand up for ourselves and bounce back and not get defeated. But there's an old adage, any strength to an excess is a weakness. So if you're just doing survivor, if that's your skill, but you don't have the other way of operating in life, it's pretty inflexible. It's like using a hammer to cut wood. It's just sometimes you need a saw, not a hammer. Survivors find it very hard to turn off their smoke detector in their mind, the smoke detector that says danger, danger, danger. They need to learn what situations require survivor actions and which don't. So sometimes you need to discriminate and back off. So a couple of things you can do. Notice how angry and competitive and confrontational you are. How often does that show up during the day? Do you have to win and fight every encounter? Is life a battle? Another question to ask yourself is, can you trust, or do you expect another time to be disappointed and betrayed? So survivors probably spend more time worrying about betrayal and being disappointed than trusting. They just cannot allow anyone to take advantage. Ask yourself what's important to you. Are you really living your life according to what's important? Is it really that important to win at any cost, even at the roadkill of your wife and children and friends and colleagues and customers? Interesting question. Ask yourself, what cost is it for me to be a rigid and absolute survivor? Pause for a timeout. Sometimes it's useful to keep your mouth shut and pause before you talk. I'll give you an example, personal example. I think I have a strong survivor in me. I've learned to relate to it. I have a little compassion, so it doesn't control me like it used to. But there was a time when I had more survivor skill than navigator mindset. So, for example, I'd be in the car driving, and I would make a turn, and my wife would say, "Why did you make that turn? Why are we going this way?" And I'd have a reaction, like basically, F you, or I'd get angry and snap at her. And then I realized, as I was studying the nature of victim, survivor, and navigator, how people go through life, this was not adding to me having an extraordinary life. So I decided to take a high-power action called don't react when I'm angry. So when she would make a comment, which I would interpret as being critical, it wasn't necessarily critical, but my survivor mindset would say, don't tell me what to do. I shut my mouth. I just told Judy, I said, Judy, listen, I noticed something about myself. First of all, I want to apologize for any time in the past I've snapped at you when you've asked me, why am I doing something like making a left turn? And what I'm going to do in the future is shut my mouth until I'm calm, and then we could talk about it. She said she would appreciate that. So I did that. And now, whenever she asks me a question, I might get a little tinge because I listen to that voice, but I don't believe that voice. That voice that says, see, she's after you. Nope, I don't believe it. I just pause, calm myself down, cool down my engine, turn off my smoke detector, and then I talk to her. Another thing you can do that might be really helpful, kind of an interesting exercise, is imagine having a funeral, your funeral, and you've invited 250 people, family, friends, colleagues, workers, to your funeral. And people are getting up to give a eulogy, talking about what was life like living with you, your wife, your children, your relatives, friends, business associates, your customers. What are they saying about you? Do you like what you hear? Sometimes when you imagine what people are saying about you, it's a wake-up call. Like Scrooge. Remember Scrooge in Christmas Carol? He had the three ghosts, past, present, future, visit him, and he was so stunned and so ashamed of his behavior, he had a transformational experience. Anyway, those are some ideas about living life as a survivor. Again, this is Mondays with Moss. Last week I spoke about life as a victim. Today, life as a survivor. Next week, life as a navigator. Kind of like the life of Nelson Mandela, Oprah Winfrey, Richard Branson, many other people. It's a way of living. It's a discipline. It's a way of developing yourself so that you're living a great life, an extraordinary life, a life of success and happiness and accomplishment. Hope you join me. Hope you stay tuned. Mondays with Moss, every Monday around this time, 12 to 12:30. And if you're interested in learning more about my ideas, go to Amazon. Take a look at Amazon and take a look under Moss Jackson. I have a couple books there, one on success and one on a really interesting new book on navigating into immortality. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you. Talk to you next week. Bye.